What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Art of War. We've got a super exciting stream for you here today. We are going to be talking about the brand new chapter-approved Pariah Nexus and the new updated missions for Warhammer 40k match play.
That's right. Seems very interesting from what I've seen so far.
A good amount of changes. I think a lot of positive changes. We're going to dive through every single one of them. We're going to go through all the cards, all the different updates to the little packet. And, you know, this isn't the full context. We don't have like a balanced data slate or anything additional to this right now. So we're not understanding like how the factions are going to fit into this too well. But we will still give our impressions at the end, focusing on like how we think the state of the game will be overall, which armies benefit the most more broadly, and just give our overall thoughts on this.
The fabric of the game is going to change quite a lot. All the missions, well, the missions, just a new pack of missions, new primary missions, new mission rules, new secondaries. Some of them are staying the same from before. Some of them are new. Some of them are new. Some of them are the same as before, but with some quality of life improvements. It's interesting. I'm very excited.
The other caveat to point out here is that last year, when we got the missions for 10th edition, Games Workshop took about, I'd say like a month, 2 months or so to release a Leviathan Tournament Companion. And in that companion, they basically put all the different cards together in what order they recommended for match play.
Yes.
That will probably happen at some point. So right now, we don't know what the exact combos are, which deployment goes with which mission and which mission rule.
Yeah.
So we'll end up seeing there, spoiler alert, no Chilling Reign. So if there's mission rules, they're going to be a bit different.
They're going to be in. I mean, they're not all like the biggest deal. They're not all
not as crazy as the previous set of them.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll go through them all one at a time. We'll give you our thoughts, and then when that match play pack comes out,
we'll do another review.
We'll do another review. It's reviews all the way down. We do it for you.
Yeah, we want to analyze everything related to match play competitive 40k and give you the best information that we have.
When we need to prepare for a competitive event, our go-to company is the Army Painter.
Thanks to their complete range of paints, spray cans, and gaming tools, we're able to complete our new armies and units in no time.
When we need to elevate the quality of our models and terrain, the Army Painter is always our first choice.
You may not know this, but the Army Painter has sponsored more competitive events than any other hobby company.
Tournament and wargaming is in their DNA.
Visit thearmypainter.com to learn more about their amazing products.
And use promo code AWPaints for a 5% discount from your Army Painter purchases.
What are you waiting for? Discover the best way to prepare your models for events with the Army Painter today.
If you want to see additional games with these brand new missions right now, as this is releasing, please check out the warroom.vhx.tv, which is our own platform. There's a 3-day free trial, and there's going to be 2 different games also involving 2 brand new factions with their codexes. So if you want to see new missions, new codexes, all in action, please do check out the War Room. In addition to that, if you're listening here on YouTube, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and also tell your friends about us. That really massively helps us grow the channel over time. All your support has been tremendous over the course of 10th edition. We've really grown a lot, and we're continuing to put upgrades into the stream and giving you the analysis that you want. And leave a comment below letting us know what you ultimately think of the mission cards, our analysis, and just what you're most excited for, because we do read those. So let's dive right in. As always, you get this little packet. We're not going to go through literally every single thing in this book, as most of the booklet is the same as previously. However, there's a couple new things. First of all, Secondary Mission Deck is going to involve 18 cards, not 16. And some of them are changed in very impactful ways. Next up, you have the secret mission cards. They previewed these on the Warhammer community site. This explains exactly how they're used and all the different scenarios that you would take them and how they are scored. Then moving on to that, we have a huge update to taking tactical secondaries, which is that previously you had a stratagem called New Orders that you could use once per game. End your command phase, you say, hey, I've captured any outpost, I'm never getting it this turn.
Yeah, it's not.
I probably
not
have another
happening.
bad card that I can't score. All right, 1 CP, I'm trading them out. That is no longer restricted to once per game, Jack.
Yeah, you can do it every single turn, and that is a massive fundamental change.
Literally
huge change. So before, there were 16 cards in the deck, and you could only ever see 11 of them, right? You draw 10 of them over the course of the game, unless there's some mission rule that wasn't actually in any of the
it wasn't in the competitive ones.
It wasn't in the competitive packs. And then you could redraw 1, and you would see 11. So if you base traded with your opponent and your opponent got captured in the outpost, you might just never see it.
Yep.
if you are fishing from turn 1 till turn 5, you're going to see 15 of 18 cards, making it much more likely you will see whatever card it is that you are looking to see.
Yeah. So this is a really big change. Like, you and I play tactical pretty much all the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we love the extra CP. That's still in here for discarding a card to end your turn. But this means when you have, especially in the late game, you have those like turns where it's 2 really difficult cards. You can't really afford to get a 0 on secondaries, or maybe like a 2 or 3. You really want to get another 5-point card in there. This is so useful, being able to do it multiple times.
It is. It's also very useful if you know the way the game is going to go. So if you know it's going to be a grindy score-based game, you can start ditching cards you can't score as early as turn 1 or 2, if you really wanted to. I know that before in the Leviathan mission pack, you could do it once. It was a huge trap to do it in the first 3 turns, because you're much more likely on turn 1 or whatever to draw a card you can't do, because your army's entirely in a deployment zone, and then you want to use that CP instead to affect the board, because turns 1, 2, and 3, the board is so much more important than it is later on in the game, because it affects the course of the game. And then 4 and 5, you can parlay that into, I know exactly where I need to get, and then redraw 1. But now if you know the game's going to be a grindy score fest, then you can redraw legitimately like 3 times during the game and afford to sacrifice CP. If both people are sitting back, you can just new orders 5 times.
Yeah.
And it's not actually a bad call to do that if you know that that is what you need to do.
I think this is a big boost for tactical, and we're going to see when we get to the cards is that there's no bonus points for taking tactical versus fixed.
No, which is going to be interesting.
So I think this change here is because of that. Because you're not getting as many extra points, but you're able to cycle cards quicker, which I think is a big deal. And like Jack said, if your opponent's not really stat checking you, don't need to save up tons of CP, you're not really able to engage them relatively safely, just keep scoring.
Yeah.
Just keep on scoring.
Just keep ditching cards, drawing new ones, cycling through the deck faster, and that'll make a big difference, especially if you recognize that's how the game's going to go and your opponent doesn't, and you start cycling cards like a madman.
They're going to feel that. Moving on to some of the other changes here, we have for the reserve restrictions. Previously, it was a rare ruling that if you start on the table, you could go back into reserve and then come down. So, like, if your opponent goes first, you could bring something into reserves that had that rule, bottom of or top of turn 1, and then bottom of 1, you'd be able to bring them in from reserve in the first battle round. They clarified here that as long as you start on the table, if it's during the battle and you go back into reserves, you can come down the first turn.
All right.
So just puts it in the mission pack. There's no extra, nonsense like debate in gray area. Deploying armies. If you deploy a Titanic unit, you skip your next deployment as you rotate between your opponent. You put your knight down, your opponent then puts something down, they will then put another thing down.
This is big.
Yep.
This is good for you. It sounds like skipping your deployment is bad. No, it's good for you.
You get to wait a little bit longer, see that firepower come down.
Exactly. Like if I'm playing knights for some reason, I'm not Brian. Brian's playing knights. They're beautiful. He loves his knights.
But you're Lord of Skulls.
My Lord of Skulls. But like he's playing knights. He's got like 6 drops, right? His opponent is always going to have the information of deployment on him.
Yep.
Is going to always put down their guns after they know where all the knights are going. Whereas now there's 3 extra drops. It might actually be a bit tough to outdrop him, which I think is fair. I think that's fine.
Yeah, and that means if you put firepower overwhelming on the one side and their last drop is this last big knight, he can go right out on the line on the other side of the board and be fine.
Yep, exactly.
So a little bit more flexibility for the knight players, which is nice. Then pretty much everything else is going to stay the same, except let's move on to the secret missions and how they work. We'll get to the actual cards in a bit. They previewed several of them. But effectively, end of the 3rd battle round, starting with the player who had the 2nd turn. If your primary VP is equal to or less than your opponent.
So both players can take one.
If they're both at like 20, for instance, or both at 19, whatever it is, however they get there, they can decide on whether they want to take a secret mission. You pick one from the deck. You don't randomly pick one. You decide which one you want. You put it face down, and boom, you have a secret, and it's going to be scored at the end of the game.
It's going to be a hot tamale.
And it caps your primary mission total to 20. So from the primary mission, whichever one is active, you can only score 20. So you're capped at 20, and then you'll get up to 20, usually 20 from the secret mission.
It's a big deal they changed it from you stop scoring primary to you're capped at 20, because a lot of the time the decision was, well, I'm going to score my home objective 2 more times. Is a guaranteed 10 better or worse than fishing for a 30 on a gambit? And the answer was always no. The answer was it's always better to just take the guaranteed primary. But now because it's capped, if I'm scoring my home objective and that's it every turn, sure, I'll take a secret mission.
Yeah.
Because I'll still score the points.
And we're going to see they're a lot stronger than Gambits.
Yes.
They will be seen in games.
Significantly better than Gambits, which was not hard.
Yep.
To be clear.
Then at the end of the battle, you reveal your secondary mission card, and then if you have achieved it, you get the extra points. And so you're capped at 40 on primary effectively, 20 from the primary mission, 20 from secret mission. But at the end of the day, it's not too common that your opponent, there was a couple missions, but it wasn't common for both you and your opponent to have 40 plus primary.
Yeah.
Outside of priority targets.
Yeah, no, well, that's gone.
Moving on, we have actions. So actions is something that existed in 9th edition. In 10th edition, there were like pseudo-actions, like investigate signals. You would go to the corners, and if you were holy with a 9 and you didn't shoot, then you could complete this thing and get points. They didn't want to call it actions.
I don't know why, but they didn't.
They were against it. But now actions are back and very clearly have a whole section. So I'll go through them because a lot of people didn't play 9th edition and aren't as familiar with what an action did and all the criteria. So some of the cards feature actions for certain units that they can perform. And here's how you do it. A unit cannot start to perform an action if one or more of the following things apply. Is it an aircraft? If you are, you cannot. If you're battle shocked, can't do it. If you have an objective control characteristic of 0, you cannot do it. Eat your heart out, Spore Mines!
Tyranid players in shambles right now.
My Necron Scarabs, Kroot Hounds, although those 2 units did get away to
Fenrisian Wolves.
to gain OC.
Yeah.
So if you're a 0 OC unit that has ways to gain OC, you're still very valuable for this type of role. But if you're just floating around at 0 OC, you're not doing this stuff. You're a screen, but you're not really actioning.
Yeah, which...
if it is within engage range of 1 or more enemy units, you cannot start the action. So it doesn't matter if you have pistols or not, unless you are a Titanic character. So you can't be Titanic only. You have to be a Titanic character. Then you can do it in engage range. If you advanced or fell back, you can't action.
Hey, guess what?
Doesn't matter if you have assault weapon, doesn't matter if you can fall back and shoot, irrelevant. You cannot do it. And then finally, it is not eligible to shoot this phase, including units that have already selected to shoot this phase. So if you've already shot in some way, but would technically still be eligible, you cannot do it.
There's a laundry list of things.
Yep.
It's going to be... It is actually fairly easy to stop a unit from actioning.
And then, yeah, exactly. So tying things up is a lot more valuable now.
Yeah, for sure. Just like hitting it with a rhino and just being like, stay.
If a unit starts to perform an action, until the end of the turn, that unit is not eligible to shoot or declare a charge unless it's a Titanic character.
Oh.
In which case, until the end of the turn, that unit cannot start to perform another action and is not eligible to declare a charge.
I'm already seeing some quality of life things for these big knights, which is that's
just
necessary.
Trying to help them out a bit more here, and that definitely is going to help a lot.
Yeah, because they cannot afford to stand still in action, but action and still do their thing. Okay, I think that's a very good idea.
But what they prevent here is you being able to sit there and do 2 different actions with the knight, and then still get in there. So you can do one of them, but you can't get greedy and do a ton.
You can, well, we'll see. I don't actually remember if cleanse still works where you can touch both objectives and cleanse both objectives with one model. We'll see.
And then if a unit performing an action makes a move, excluding pylons and consolidates, those are the only 2 moves you can make, or leaves the battlefield, the action is not completed.
Okay, so we got primary mission deck. First one up is a new one. We got Burden of Trust. So second battle round onwards, at the end of the command phase or end of your turn, if it's the 5th battle round, you're going second. The player's turn it is scores 4 victory points for each objective marker they control that is not within their deployment zone. Then for each objective marker that player controls, they can pick a unit from their army to guard that objective. So you get 4 victory points for each objective marker not within your deployment zone.
Yep.
So mid-board only.
It means you can fall behind on primary pretty easily.
Pretty easily, and you only get 4 victory points for holding it at the start of your turn. Then at the start of your turn, you pick a unit to guard the objective, and at the end of your opponent's turn, you score 2 victory points for each of your units other than battle-shocked units that are within range of and guarding an objective marker you control. So Each objective, you can select one unit on it to guard the objective. If at the end of your opponent's turn that unit is still on the objective, you still hold the objective, they're not battle shocked, and you're still guarding it, you get 2 victory points per objective. Next up is Linchpin. So Linchpin is end of the command phase, or end of your turn if it's the 5th battle round, you're going second. If the player whose turn it is does not control the objective marker in their deployment zone, they score 3 victory points for every objective they control. If they do control the objective marker in their deployment zone, they get 3 for that and 5 for every other.
So if you happen to just leave your deployment zone and don't hold your home objective, or your opponent gets back there and clears you off, you're scoring a lot less on primary.
A lot less on primary. I suspect that clause will not come up that often, but when it does, it'll be very funny.
There are certain armies that were designed to just be like, I don't even care at all, I'm just going straight in, I'm going to take yours. It's a lot worse.
Next up is Purge the Foe, which is the exact same as it was before with one big quality of life increase.
Purge the Foe is the kill points mission.
Yes, so before it was every turn, from turn 1 till turn 5, you got 4 points if you killed an enemy unit. And then you got 4 points at the end of the battle round if you killed more enemy units than your opponent did.
Yep.
And then you got, at the start of your turn 2 through turn 5, you scored 4 victory points for each, if you have an objective, right? If you control at least one.
Just one.
And then if you, at the start of your turn, you control more than your opponent, you get an extra 4. So you can get up to 16, or you can get as low as 0, depending on if you controlled objectives or killed stuff. The quality of life is that turn 1, you can get the 4 points for killing something, but you cannot get the 4 points for killing more.
Which was usually a huge swing factor, is you at bottom of turn, your opponent kind of has to step out, put something on objectives, do something. They don't kill anything. You then get the kill, and you get kill more. All of a sudden, you have an 8-point advantage in this game.
That happened a lot, especially people who weren't like as experienced with it. You would just get 8 points because you'd pick one thing off. Like against someone who's very experienced, they know turn 1 Purge the Foe. They need to guard and make sure you can't kill anything, right? Even if they go first. But oftentimes people would move forward, leave one little tiny unit hanging, and you would pick it off, and you get 4 points for kill, 4 points for kill more, and they would get 0, and you just be +8, and that's a massive point swing. Now it's +4, which I think is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, the Ritual. So this was one of the most drawish missions out there, where you would create actions, and you'd very easy to score because you put objectives in the castle where you were going to defend. It's a pretty drawish mission, so let's see what they do.
Also very hard to get a primary differential early because there's only one objective. It's in the middle. Like you can only start scoring other objectives on turn 3. It was very drawish.
Yeah, so let's see what they change. So when setting up the battlefield, you remove all objective markers in no man's land except the one that's closest to the center. So you just have that center one. And then now there's an action, the Ritual. You do it in your shooting phase, you pick a unit, it completes at the end of your turn. You set up one objective marker anywhere on the battlefield wholly within no man's land and within 1 inch of your unit, provided it can be set up exactly 12 from one other objective marker within no man's land, not within 6 of another. I believe it used to be 9.
It did. It used to be exactly 9 and not within 9 of each other, and it had no restriction for board edge, which it sounds like this does not as well.
This does not as well, as far as I can tell. So when you score it is second battle round onwards and your command phase, and if you're in the bottom of turn and it's turn battle round 5, you also get it then. Player whose turn it is scores 5 victory points for each objective in no man's land up to 15. So this one means that the objective can be a little bit farther from where it would.
Has to be a little bit
Well,
further.
has to be, actually has to be. And because there's no restriction on the side, it's probably still going to remain a relatively drawish, high-scoring mission.
Yeah, what it should probably be is like you get 10 points on turn 2, 8 points on turn 3, and then 5 points on turn 4, and like 3 points per objective on turn 5. Because what usually happens is turn 2, there's only one objective that you can even score.
Yep.
And so usually nobody will hold that, and you get 0 on turn 2 for both players. And then on turn 3, there's only one objective you spawn, so both players get a 5. And then both players get a 10. And then by that point, the board is carpeted with objectives, so you just get a 15.
Then we have Scorched Earth. Okay, this was the one that was basically stuck to Dawn of War.
Yes.
So let's see how it changes here. This is burning objectives. So the action is now burn objective. And it starts in your shooting phase from the second battle round onwards. You pick one unit from your army within range of an objective that's not your deployment zone one. End of your opponent's next turn or the end of the battle, whichever comes first. If your unit is still in range of the objective and you control it, it's considered burned. So you score victory points as you previously would. So when is scored anytime second battle round onwards. Each time the player's turn is burns an objective marker, that player scores 5 victory points if the objective marker was in no man's land, or 10 instead if the objective marker was in their deployment zone. And then the normal primary mission is end of your command phase. Same qualifier if you're going second for the final battle round. Player whose turn is scores 5 for each objective, up to 10.
Just like last time, you can't do it turn 1.
Yep.
And then you can pick 1 unit from your army and burn it. And then you can no longer burn your home objective. It was never a good plan. You handed your opponent 10 points and you couldn't score it. But like, you theoretically could. Now you theoretically can't. And otherwise, I believe this is exactly the same. I think they just made it an action instead of having it be a non-action.
Does it say the objective disappear? Yeah, the objective marker is burned and removed from the battlefield.
Yes.
Yep.
So that mission stays exactly the same. That is also a fairly drawish mission because you only get 10 points on primary, and it is tough to burn objectives because if you hold on, you still score the objective, right?
If you burn it.
Yeah. So when does it complete? End of your opponent's next turn or end of the battle. So you do burn it before you score it, which means that it's pretty drawish because if you're holding 2 objectives and they're holding 2 objectives and you're fighting over the center, you're not going to burn either. You're not going to burn your objective in no man's land because you'll burn it for 5 points, but then you can't hold it. It does complete end of the battle now, which is pretty big.
It does.
So if you get to your opponent, like you bottom a turn, you get to your opponent's home objective, and you're like, burn, and it goes away, that is huge.
That's the biggest change here, is that bottom of the turn has a little bit of an advantage if neither player is burning things, but then all of a sudden you do it and are able to get the extra points. So bottom of turn does have an advantage, but also it's usually Dawn of War, and going first and staging in the center is quite powerful.
Yeah.
Supply drop.
Oh,
my
your
least favorite mission in the entire game. It is still here. Let's see how it changed. So, start of the battle, players randomly select 2 different objective markers in no man's land. The first that's selected is the Alpha. The second that's selected is the Omega. And at the start of the 4th battle round, the Alpha objective is yoinked and removed from the battlefield. And at the start of the 5th battle round, all objective markers in no man's land apart from the Omega are removed. So there's only 1 at the end. Now, second battle round onwards, end of your command phase, you score a primary, and it is 5 points in the second and third battle rounds, 8 in the 4th, and 15 in the 5th battle round. This mission didn't change at all, which is a devastating blow because I think it was the worst mission in the
The only time this makes sense as a mission is if you think that all of the objectives in no man's land are equally easy for both players to access, and that's not the case.
Which is not the case.
It's just not the case. Generally, the one above your deployment zone is much, much easier for you to take and control than the one to the right of your deployment zone. Vice versa for your opponent. And so if the one on your side disappears, then the center, then your opponent's, that's tough.
I think the one change that bare minimum should have been made on this mission is that the Omega is always the middle. So you don't roll for that. Omega is just the middle.
That'd be sick.
If you can't control the middle at the end of the game or stop your opponent from, all right, they'll have an advantage there.
Take and hold is exactly the same.
That's the basic mission. 5 points for every objective. It does count your deployment zone 1. So this is the natural kind of basic 40k.
Yep, 5 points per objective, up to 15 every turn. Start of your end of your command phase and end of the game if you're going second.
Now, if you fall behind far on primary on this one, which is possible against aggressive armies, you do have the access to secret missions now to help, which is nice.
Terraform. So Terraform is an action. So first off, end of the command phase or end of your turn, blah, 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 if you're going second. End of turn, 5th battle round. The player's turn it is scores victory points as follows, up to 15. 4 for every objective marker they control, including the one in their deployment zone. And 2 victory points for every objective marker they have terraformed during the battle. And those are cumulative. So if you hold an objective and you've terraformed it, you will score 6 points. If you don't hold the objective and you've terraformed it, you get 2 points. So how do you terraform objectives? In your shooting phase, you can start the action. 1 or more units from your army, each within range of a different objective marker that is not within your deployment zone and has not been terraformed by you or your opponent. End of your opponent's next turn or the end of the battle, if the unit performing this action is still within range of the objective marker and you control it, you've terraformed it. So basically, you go to the objective and you leave your mark on the objective. And even if your opponent takes it off of you, you've still been the one to terraform it. And for every turn thereafter, even if they control it, you'll still score 2 points.
as long as the first time around they don't contest it.
Right.
You have to control it once.
That's
Yeah.
right. Once you completed the action, they can take it away from you, and they'll score the 4, so they'll still want to do it, and they'll deny you the 4, but you'll still
you
have
get
that
passive
steady
economy.
drip. All right. Unexploded Ordnance. This is Servo Skulls, babies. Let's go. Woo!
The ordnance in your brain's about to explode.
That's right. So, Servo Skulls, before I get into what this is objectively the worst designed mission in the pack. It is also the one I have the most fun with, but is objectively the worst designed. That being said, I have a lot of fun with it. So, let's get into
The
it.
new version.
All right, so the objective markers that start the battle in No Man's Land are hazard objective markers. They're unexploded ordnance. You don't want that near you. You want that near your opponent. You want to push it to them, and then they blow up. Okay, so at the end of each player's turn, the player whose turn it is scores victory points as follows. 8 victory points for each hazard objective marker that's wholly within their opponent's deployment zone. 5 victory points for each other hazard objective marker that is wholly within 6, so they don't stack anymore, which is good. There was like a week where it did. And then 2 victory points for each other hazard objective marker that's wholly within 12 of their opponent's deployment zone. Okay? All of the scoring is scored end of your turn, so there's very little interaction your opponent can take other than moving them towards you so far you can't move them back.
Yeah.
So the way you move them is you do an action called Move Hazard. Starts in your shooting phase, 1 or more units from your army, each within range of a different hazard objective marker you control. End of your turn, if the unit performing this action is still within range of the same hazard objective marker and you control it, you can move each of those hazard objective markers up to 6. When doing so, that objective marker cannot end that move on top of any other objective marker or model or inside impassable parts of terrain features. So this is exactly the same as it was before, but you have to do an action to move it, which does make it harder to move the objectives. That being said, the way you play this is exactly the same as you played Servo Skulls before, which is go first. That's very critical here, because there is literally 0 benefit for going second. There's massive upside for going first. Let me explain. So you go first, you go onto the objectives, and you kick them directly towards your opponent. I don't give a crap what like complicated, cool plan you have about kicking them sideways to yourself so that you can then later easier kick them towards them, and like you can kick them sideways so your opponent can't get on them. Don't do any of that. Kick it straight towards your opponent's deployment zone. Then they will walk up, they will kick it straight back towards you. And then, you start second battle round onwards, you start scoring. So you walk up and you kick them all back towards your opponent, directly back. Okay, now they are within 12 and you score 6 victory points. Then they go and they kick them all directly back towards you, and they score nothing because they're not within 12. And then you go and you kick them back and you score 6, and until you have 24 points and they have 0. Now theoretically, some of those objectives will like break through and like get closer to your opponent's deployment zone and get in. But the theory is there is literally 0 help for going second. If the board state is even remotely in your opponent's control in any way, and you're going second, you cannot score points.
So how are you feeling overall about this set here?
I feel pretty good. I think the missions are fine. I think a couple of them are a bit like awkward to score, which is going to end up being not ideal. Like Burden of Trust, only scoring mid-board, only scoring 4 per objective. Okay, that's a very low scoring mission. Like a very low scoring mission. And you can guard the objectives, but like it's a very low scoring mission.
Yeah.
So there are several that are very low scoring. There's several that are as high scoring as they were before. Generally, I'd say the primary is lower scoring than it was in the past.
Generally, yeah, without priority targets being in a couple slots.
Yeah.
So that definitely leans towards them also, I think, wanting secret missions to be more impactful and taken.
And I love priority missions, priority targets going away. I hated that mission so much because turn 5 was all that mattered. And I wanted to leave that back in the 7th edition of the past.
All right, well, we got a couple deployments. There's going to be 6 of them. And if you aren't familiar with them, we'll have a little graphic that shows you. But Dawn of War, Hammer and Anvil, Search and Destroy, Crucible of Battle all remain here.
One slight difference on Dawn of War.
Yep.
Dawn of War is now 12 inches up, not 10.
And then I believe Crucible is slightly changed as well. But
So
it might actually be
Crucible, no, Crucible's the same.
the same. Okay.
Crucible's the same. Search and Destroy is the same. Hammer and Anvil is the same. Dawn of War, you are significantly closer, and you have a deeper deployment zone.
Yeah.
And the 12 inches on Dawn of War, I think, is going to make a massive difference.
Very likely.
Because you get 2 further inches of deployment forward. Your opponent gets 2 further inches of deployment forward. You are 20 inches apart. So that is very crossable.
Yep. Then we have Sweeping Engagement, which existed before. It's the diagonal Dawn of War, but it is now changed. It is more of an uppy, downy type of situation where you're kind of playing building blocks.
Kind of steps.
So instead of being a straight diagonal from your corner to 22 inches up, instead it's like a step. It's a little step.
Yeah, so it is basically Dawn of War where half of the battlefield you are 8 inches up and the other half you are 14 inches up. Mm-hmm. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's relatively interesting. I didn't mind Sweeping Engagement, but this should still be relatively fine as well. I think it's better than Dawn of War personally. I always liked having a corner I could put have more depth to.
Yeah, I would say I like this Sweeping Engagement more, and I think it's going to lead to some interesting feeling deployments in the way that Sweeping before didn't really feel that interesting. Yeah. So I think I'm excited for it.
And then finally, Tipping Point, which is brand new, and it is effectively doing something similar to Sweeping Engagement in that it takes the normal version of like Hammer and Anvil / Crucible of Battle and creates a building block situation where part of it is closer, part of it is farther from your opponent.
Yep. It is Hammer and Anvil where half of the board is 20 inches up and the other half is 12. That means you get less real estate than Hammer and Anvil, but it is slanted, so that means that you'll have a strong side and a weaker side. I think it's interesting. I also like that there's...
I like that more on something like Supply Drop, where you can more easily access your opponent's safe objective.
To me, it looks like the safe objective is like really safe. Look at that. So you're right next to the deployment zone.
Yeah, but it's right there. Like it should be out in the open at least, where you can interact with it.
Yeah,
is my thinking. But we'll see what the terrain.
We will see. The objective markers are in halfway down the board, but it doesn't look like it's quite evenly split. It does look like one is 10 inches from one deployment zone and is 18 inches from the other, so it is just straight up further away from one deployment zone than the other. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm happy with them putting more deployments like this in the pack because I want to play on more stable boards, whereas things like Dawn of War are very unstable by design.
Yep.
So I'm very happy about that. I did a video analyzing all the deployment zones on our in the war room, and I imagine I will do something like that again. Also did one analyzing all the secondary cards. I imagine I will do one again.
Yeah, very likely. People love the Jack theory.
They love it?
It's obsessive.
So ultimately, quite happy with these. I think Sweeping Engagement had the problem of the little corner right in your corner of the board was anything out there was very lonely, very scared. Whereas now it's a lot less.
You get a bit more depth.
You get a bit more depth there to play with.
All right, so those are the deployments. So we got our primary missions, we got our deployments. The last factor that is in the primary set or the mission side of things is the mission rule. And there's a lot of new ones. Most of these are dramatically changed or brand new. There's not a lot of repeating things. So we'll kind of switch off here and just read them out.
This is the one I haven't really read.
So mission rule. Adapt or die, Jack. You better adapt or you're going to die.
Oh no.
Simple.
I choose adapt.
So it has 2 different qualifiers. So if you're using fixed, you get 1 set of rules. If you're using tactical, you get a different set.
Interesting.
So once per battle, at the end of the player's turn, after scoring any amount of victory points, they can discard one of their secondary mission cards and replace it with another secondary mission card that has the fixed mission symbol, if you're playing fixed. So you've scored some amount of it.
When do you do this?
Once per battle, at the end of that player's turn, after scoring any amount of victory points, you can discard one of their secondary mission cards. So effectively, you score one of your cards, but don't score the other one, right?
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. For players using fixed, once per battle, end of that player's turn, after scoring any victory points, they can discard one of their secondary mission cards and replace with another. No, they can score both and
they
then
could
just
score both,
replace. Yeah.
Or they could score one instead of the other and then say, I'm never scoring this the rest of the game.
Yeah, oops, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
You can definitely swap into Assassinate partway through a game or into Bring It Down halfway through a game. That is where this matters.
Or you're like, you know what? I just realized that I'm actually not going to get very many Bring It Down based on how my opponent's playing. we'll swap that out for cleanse or something.
Yeah, I think what canny opponents will do every single time with this is if your opponent gives up a ton of Assassinate or Bring It Down, and this mission rule is in play, you pick something else. You pick Engage, Homers, whatever. I'm forgetting the ones in the pack, but like you do that, and then as soon as the fight actually kicks off, you're like, sick. All right, I didn't mean Engage. I actually meant Assassinate. And then now you don't have the thing where your opponent can just hang back and force you to come to them, which is the reason why those secondaries are a trap often.
Or difficult, yeah.
Or tough.
Yeah. So then if you're playing tactical, twice per battle, after drawing a secondary mission card, that player can draw another secondary mission card, then shuffle one of those two back into their deck. So you get a little twice per game, a rinse and repeat, instead of having to spend your CP, or in addition to.
It's twice a game you get to do that?
Twice per battle.
Okay, those are both very impactful rules.
Now, there was something like this, not for fixed, I don't think. I think it was just for tactical. Might have been for fixed as well. But there was a mission rule like this in the previous pack, and it was never used in the competitive Leviathan tournament pack.
Okay, interesting.
So this might also not be seen, but I said it then, and I will say it now. If this is in, it's very easy to score points.
It is very easy to score points. It is also your worst nightmare if you are playing a heavy character-based or a heavy vehicle monster-based army. Because then your opponent gets best of both worlds. They pick Bring It Down, they don't get punished. They don't have to run to you to score their points.
They start with Cleanse,
They start
do the
with
action,
Cleanse.
and then swap into it when you engage them.
Exactly, and once you've engaged them, they're like, all right, now that's a 20. Right, now I'm just gonna get my points on it. But I didn't have to run to you. It's a massive difference there. The redrawing 2 tactical cards is also very good. Like it's also
super good,
very
like
good.
ludicrously good. You're
very
going to
good.
score points.
Yeah, points are yours.
So next up we have Fog of War, and this one is in the first battle round. Units have the benefit of cover, just period.
Interesting. I mean, they did already. It's 10th edition.
It's 10th edition, and then players cannot use core stratagems excluding new orders, which is the swap into a new tactical secondary.
Sure. I mean, turn 1's not...
This might be the new Chilling... Like I said, Chilling Reign isn't in here. This could be one of the new Chilling Reigns where it's in a lot of the missions because, yeah, almost everybody's hiding turn 1. Like, you have cover.
You have cover
and you'll get
already.
it against indirect fire anyway. So, okay. And then using core stratagems, there's not really any that you, like, have to use turn 1.
Core stratagems usually revolve around being near your opponent. Grenades, tank shock, heroic intervention, counteroffensive. Those are the big ones I can think off the top of my head. Yeah, you can't use the CP reroll.
You can't use the CP reroll.
That's a big one. Not being able to use CP reroll turn 1.
But turn 1 is...
Occasionally you need to get to an objective and you're like, oh, I didn't get the 2 up on the advance. Oh no, it's Fog of War. And then you're sad.
But at least you have all your units alive.
That's true.
So this could be seen in that situation. Hidden supplies. So this is where you would take the middle objective and you'd split it into 2, and you'd have 6 objectives on the board. So let's see. When drawn, if you draw the ritual primary mission, discard this mission and draw a different one. In the place objective marker step, players must set up 1 additional objective marker. Before setting it up, players must first move the objective marker in the center 6 inches towards a corner, and then they set up the second one diagonally opposite. So it is exactly the same as before.
Inspired Leadership. While a player's warlord is not within their deployment zone, each time a unit from that player's army takes a battle shock check, if that player's warlord is within 9 inches of and visible to that unit, +1. That, actually pretty big.
Against Tyranids, baby.
9 inches and visible means you're going to have to... 9 inches is super easy. Visible, you're just going to have to make sure that you don't mess it up.
It's within, not wholly within, right?
Yes.
Cool.
That's a big deal. Going to leadership 5 on a lot of your units is a big deal. Leaving your deployment zone is not the hardest thing in the world.
Hey, if there's a Tyranid invasion, I want inspiring leaders.
Prepared positions. Players can target their battle line units with the go to ground and heroic intervention stratagems for 0 CP, but cannot do so if they've already used that stratagem on a different unit that turn. Most of the time, this is not going to be that important. Occasionally, it will be very important.
Yep.
Custodian Guard, love. Their go-to-ground doesn't matter for them because they're always getting cover. It's 10th edition, and they have a 4-up info. But free heroic intervention, that's really good.
Yep, in a crazy like combat-on-combat situation or where your opponent's trying to charge to contest primary, it can come up.
Yep, you still keep your CP. You can't do it multiple times, but you get to keep your CP, and that is huge when you then want to use it for counteroffensive.
Pretty impactful.
If you have 2 CP and you get to heroic and counteroffensive, it's massive. Raise banners. End of each player's turn, if a battle line unit from their army is within range of an objective marker that player controls, that unit raises a banner on the objective marker. The player scores 1 victory point, and that player's units can no longer raise a banner on that objective marker. It's very simple. End of your turn, you go bink on any objective you control that does not already have a banner and has a battle line unit on it. You score 1 victory point and you're done. You don't continue to recur the victory point. None of that. You just score 1 point.
Yep.
There has not seemed to be so far a lot of benefits towards battle line. I know they were hyping that up, but
they're coming.
So far they seem kind of tame.
They're tame though, I think, overall.
Yeah. Like scoring a couple extra points, right? Because you can raise a banner on the one in your deployment zone. You can raise one on an objective your opponent has a banner on. Like, having battle line is nice for this mission rule, but it's only going to get you an extra like 1 or 2 points.
I think they're going to throw it into probably like a couple of them. Like, I think the Leviathan pack had like 14 different combos.
15.
Like
15. Yeah.
So they will probably throw it into a couple of them and encourage tournaments to run like at least one of those, just so that those people who want to run a lot of battle line and have those kind of balanced lists like that get a little benefit.
Yeah.
But I don't, like, if you're getting wrecked on primary, me getting an extra like 5 raise the banner points is not.
It's not even going to be 5. To be 5, you'd have to have put battle line on every single objective on the board during the course of the game. Rapid escalation. How many more do we have? We have another 4. Rapid escalation. In the first battle round, each player can set up battle line units from strategic reserves in the reinforcement step of their movement phase. If they do, those units must be set up wholly within 6 inches of any battlefield edge, but no model in these units can be set up within the enemy deployment zone. The points total of the units a player can set up this way cannot exceed 10% of their total points limit for the chosen battle size, as shown below, and then they do the math for you, where they do 10% of 2,000 points.
Yep.
It's 200. This is not bad.
It's not bad. Once again, it's not going to be game breaking, I don't think. There's a lot of infiltrators in the game right now, a lot of scout moves. So it's nice, but I don't think it's going to be, I use this all the time. Most battle line can go is for like battle line that doesn't have access to transports. It can be nice. I mean, gargoyles can probably do some nasty things.
Yeah, they just appear off the side of the board.
Early move blocks.
Realistically, you're probably not going to use it on any of that. You're probably just going to move them up the board as it is.
Very likely.
You know, that is what it is. All right. Smoke and mirrors. After both players have deployed their armies, starting with the attacker, each player can place 1 unit from their army that is on the battlefield into strategic reserves, regardless of how many units are already in strategic reserves. The points value of such a unit cannot exceed 25% of a player's total points limit, so for 2,000 points, that is 500. So you get to just deploy a lot of your army in strat reserves. Yep. This is strong. This is legitimately strong. You can't plan around it, but you can put 1,500 points of your army in reserves if that's something you really felt like.
And now, is that a risk you're willing to take in certain matchups? And
like if you're playing world leaders.
Considering a lot of these armies also, or a lot of these missions have, the fact is if your opponent gets really ahead on primary, you have to basically take a secret mission to come back because they're so low scoring generally.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
It's all right. I mean, you can't redeploy it. You have to place it into reserves.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I think there's probably going to be some niche fake out opportunities, but I don't think it's going to be game breaking.
There aren't too many armies that are just like, I will play, because it was more popular when the game was in 8th edition 6 turns, and there was that whole extra battle round where you could score points. So playing a cagey late game style and overwhelming your opponent then was a little easier. Now the game is very fast paced, and it's hard to like say, I'm going to give up the first couple turns.
It is, yeah, for sure. Also, because this is a mission rule and not something you can guarantee have every turn, you can't, like, every game, you can't
design
make
your
a
list
plan around it. Yeah. So, that being said, I think it's fine. I don't think you'll be able to really break it because you might only see one of these missions per tournament, if that. And so what that means is like, oh, maybe you have a cool play that one game, but you're not really going to like make an army that cheeses it.
We've got Stalwarts, which is battle line units. Can perform an action, that perform an action are still eligible to shoot in that turn, which is nice.
Not bad.
The first thing that can get around the action rules. but cannot start to perform another action in that turn, so you're just stuck on the one. And battle line units can perform actions while within engage range of one or more enemy units. So you get around a couple of the qualifiers.
They can't fall back and do it, but if they're already in position, they can.
Yep. And so if you plan on surviving in there, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's real.
So that's a nice little update, and probably will be seen because they kind of emphasize they want to support battle line a bit more. This will probably be slotted into a decent amount of missions.
I'd imagine so. Sounds like a decent rule. I don't really see any battle line that really abuse that. I will say, a Primaris Crusader unit that is 20 man with a character that's in combat with you and is like dropping teleport homers
And cleanse
is going to be annoying.
Yep.
That being said, I don't think it's like broken or a problem or anything.
And then finally, swift action is also for battle line units that they can advance or fall back and still do an action.
I like that.
So once again, so that means with these two, they will probably use this in certain missions instead of like adding it to certain armies, I think.
Yeah, I think that's super cool.
With them already thinking about trying to get around the main qualifiers for doing actions.
You know what would be really cool is if these were just the mission rules and you could pick one every game. So you'd be like, this game I want my battle line to advance, fall back in action, and this game I want them to action shoot or action in combat.
Yeah, and so those armies that are like, I'm going to run 6 Dread Knights and 3 Land Raider Redeemers with no battle line, you're not betting from any of this.
No.
Good luck doing actions also. So I think if they put more stuff like that in the missions, it'll at least help kind of encourage people not to do that type of stuff.
That's right.
Before points come into factor.
All right. I believe we're at secret missions.
Secret missions.
Command Insertion. Command Insertion is if your warlord, end of the battle, if your warlord is within range of one or more objective markers in your opponent's deployment zone that you control. So you have to have your warlord on their deployment objective marker, on their home objective marker.
At the end of the battle.
At the end of the battle, and you need to control it. All of these are going to be better for the player going second, like by a lot.
Yep.
But that's okay, because 40k is very first turn favored. So if you're going first and you're getting beat on primary, you kind of deserve it. I'm sorry to say. But still, these come at the start of the 4th battle round or end of the 3rd battle round, functionally the same thing. Yep. Which means a decent amount of 40k has happened by this point, and you know what the shape of the game is going to look like.
Yep.
So you can pick the right one. So Command Insertion, if Angron is staring down their home objective, like...
Warlords that are extremely fast, very durable, that can redeploy, can teleport, anything like that, that's pretty darn good. Like having the in Grey Knights, the Grandmaster be your Warlord, if you don't have Drago, he just kind of hangs around, and then all of a sudden you're like, boom, in reserve, 3.1 away, down.
Yeah, that can be really nasty, especially if they like think you're doing something else.
Like Necron's Hypercrypt, being able to just drop like an Imatech in there when you need to.
The mind games are real.
The mind games are real.
And there is no, I actually didn't take one. All 4 of these are missions. This isn't, stay as planned or whatever. Like if you've taken one, you've taken one.
Yep, you put it face down and you have taken one.
Yes. All right, what's up next?
Then we have Shatter Cohesion. It's scored end of battle. If there are no enemy units, no units from your opponent's army on the battlefield, you killed them, they're dead, 20 points. You just table them.
Table them,
simple.
Easy.
Kill them dead. Not a single, no prisoners left. Or every unit from your opponent's army that is on the battlefield meets one or more of the conditions. They are battle shocked. They're below half strength, and that unit is more than 3 from all objective markers. So if they're not on objective markers, they're below half strength or battle shocked. Every single one of their units fills at least one of these criteria, 20 points.
So this is actually easier than it sounds like, because all you need to do at the end of the day, if you're going second, is push them off every objective. Mm-hmm. If you push them off every objective, every unit in their army will fail that 3rd bullet point, and you're done.
Yep. Or they're all just wounded. They're all below half strength.
Yeah.
There's no revival. It's just like you can't do anything about it.
Yep. So like if I know that I can push my opponent off their home on bottom of 5, and I can probably get that unit down to half strength, or battle shock it, or whatever, it's not that hard to do.
Nope. And once again, these are if you are, you can only use these if you have equal to or less than your opponent's primary victory points at the start of the 3rd battle round.
Yeah. It definitely tripped me up that this started with you've tabled your opponent, because I'm like, damn, that's hard. Because if a unit sits in the corner the whole game, like, oh, I don't think I can get to it,
Yeah.
No. If they sit in the corner, they don't qualify for the bullet point of being within range of an objective marker.
It's one or more of those qualifiers.
So this one's actually, if you think you can control all 5 objectives at the end of the game, like bottom of turn 5 after your opponent is not trying to control them anymore, then damn, you can just do this.
You can do it. All right, what's next?
Unbroken Wall. End of the battle if you control 3 or more objective markers that are not within your deployment zone. This is going to be crazy with the ritual. Like, absolutely bananas, because there is no reason you can't put the two of those together.
No, so
it's not like the mission pack will say, oh, you can't play Unbroken Wall on the ritual. I mean, maybe it will, but like, that's not part of, the mission's layout, right? Like, that's going to be crazy on that.
Because just think about it. You're doing the action almost every turn. You're doing it probably 4 times. Usually you don't have to do it the 5th time, but like 4, so easy.
So easy. Like,
Unless
there's
your opponent
9
tables
objectives in midboard. You have to control 3 of them.
The only other side to that is that the ritual, it's easy to fend your primary anyway. So the only way that this will come up is if somehow your opponent stops you from creating the objectives or is able to deny you primary the first 2 times.
I will tell you, it's friggin' impossible. Like, here's the thing about the ritual. It's fairly low scoring. Yeah. It is because you, as we said when we came up, it's like you score 5 points on turn 2. No, you score 0 on turn 2 because you don't control the center. Then you score 5 on turn 3 and 5 or 10 on turn 4 and then 15. And like,
you can get 5 on turn 2, right? Because you start the action in your first turn, you create the objective, and you can get a 5 off of it.
That's true. That's true.
So you get 5, 10, and then you can get 15s after that. But you like first by this point you will have maybe 15 primary.
Yeah.
And you'll be looking down the barrel of, am I going to be able to actually do all these actions or not?
Right, because like if you get 5, 5, 10, 15, which is a fairly reasonable way for that to go, you've gotten a 35. But if you complete Unbroken Wall, you get a 40.
Honestly, you'll like this. If you can just smash your opponent and just stop them from creating objectives and just take their half of the board, you can just say, I'm doing Unbroken Wall. I'm going to have your objectives at the, like your half of the board at the end, and I'm not even going to bother wasting time creating the objectives.
Yeah.
That's possible.
It's possible. Now, I think if you're smashing your opponent, you're going to score the primary necessary regardless.
Probably.
But I do think on the ritual, if you are getting smashed, you can just score Unbroken Wall. Yep. You just can do it. If you're going second, you just do it. And it seems a little strong there. Otherwise, it seems a little tough, right? If it's a normal mission, it's not the ritual. If it's a normal mission, this seems hard. Now, you can, like if there's split center objectives like hidden supplies, then you definitely can just be like, hey, I think I'm going to control 3 or 4 objectives.
It's a lot easier.
So I think this is risky if you play a normal mission, but if you play a mission where there's more than 3 objectives in midboard, it becomes progressively much easier.
Yeah.
And if they do split center objectives on anything where only the center counts, you're going to see Unbroken Wall taken every time by like both players. And that just is what it is. Like, Unbroken Wall is risky until it's broken.
Yeah.
The Unbroken Wall is broken.
Yeah, you have to have a lot of confidence to just be like, I will control all 3, end of game, no problem.
Yes. And to state it.
Yeah.
Again, these are really only good if you're going second.
You can do it going first if you're going to do if your opponent's getting crippled at some point. Yeah. They're just not going to have enough resources to deal with what your late game is. And then finally, War of Attrition. End of battle. 1 or more battle line units from your army are within your opponent's deployment zone, and one of the following conditions applies. That there are no battle line units from your opponent's army on the battlefield, or every battle line unit from your opponent's army that is on the battlefield is within your opponent's deployment zone.
Yes. So your opponent cannot have any battle line units in midboard or in your deployment zone, and you just have to toe in.
Yep. So it's within, not wholly within.
Yeah. So Eldar can definitely flat 6 advance and then fire and fade their unit and go a ridiculous distance. Can go 19 inches. So if they toe out of their deployment zone like 2 inches, on turn 5 they're just like bam, and they just like toe 1 model in, and all of a sudden that's 20 points. Like, Eldar are going to be bananas on these because it is so easy for them to do. It's so easy for them to plant their warlord on your home objective. The only question is, can they take it from you?
Yeah,
like,
you have to
it's
control
so
it, right?
easy for them to do that. The dude moves 28 inches.
Yeah, they have to control it.
They have to control it, but like,
It's possible.
it's possible.
Everything's possible with Eldar.
Everything's possible with Eldar. War of Attrition is really possible because their battle line can move 19 inches in a turn and tag your deployment zone. Unbroken Wall, they're quick, so they can get to objectives you might not see, but that's not probably the best for them. And then Shatter, Cohesion, they're actually not bad at because they can access the whole board, which is a big deal. But War of Attrition is definitely one where you can just get wrecked if you have no battle line.
You could. So at the end of the day, I think these are obviously dramatically more impactful than Gambits, which were useless. This will actually be seen, and probably in a decent number of games. I think in a game where you're both going to be relatively even on primary, and you expect that to continue, you probably stay with the primary, and you try and go for that one denial play that your opponent can't really stop, that hasn't seen, and you pull it off and you win off that. But in matchups where you are going to fall behind on primary early, but you're going to do the damage to them, these things are going to be taken all the time.
All the time. I think you're going to see these. I don't think you're going to see them in half of games. I think you're probably going to see them in about a quarter of the games, is my guess.
Yeah.
And that's reasonable.
Yeah,
They're not that
they
hard
will
to
be
achieve.
seen. They're not supremely hard. They're on the difficult side, but possible.
But possible.
Especially if you're in control in the late game. So if you fall behind on primary on some of these missions, which are low scoring, you are going to take one of these and just be like, I will be in a position to score at least 20 extra VP, and that'll probably tie primary. And if you have more stuff at the end of the game, you probably are going to score a bit more secondaries.
Yeah, so I definitely keep a deck, even if you don't plan on using these, keep these at hand so that when your opponent takes one, you can spread them out on the table and be like, all right, I'm going to make sure that one doesn't happen, and that one doesn't happen, and that one doesn't happen, and that one doesn't happen. As much as you can. If Eldar fire and fades their character onto your deployment zone,
and I believe the player going second has to decide first. Where does it say that? End of the third battle round, starting with the player who had the second turn. So the person going second has to basically say, I am committed to a secret, then you'll get to decide, having that knowledge.
Yeah. It's interesting design. High risk, high reward.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it goes.
All right, then we have the secondary objectives. There's some new ones, there's some existing ones that changed, and there's 18 instead of 16 now.
Yes.
All right.
First up, we got Area Denial, which is basically, it's very similar to how it was before. But they did clean up that weird corner case where you could be nowhere within 6 inches of the center of the board. Your opponent had a unit in a very specific configuration, and all of a sudden you got 3 points off it. They cleared that up.
Yeah.
So now the way it works is one or more units from your army are within 3 of the center of the battlefield. Not wholly within 6, within 3. Probably about the same most of the time. Mm-hmm. And there are no enemy units within 3 inches of the center. You get 2 victory points. Not 3, 2. One or more units from your army are within 3 inches of the center, and there's no enemy units within 6 of the center, even partially within 6, you get 5. This is harder to score, and harder to score for the lower amount as well. Because being within 3 is slightly harder most of the time than being wholly within 6, because you have to, one model, for example, one little idiot can't just be toe over the line, he has to be within 3. And your opponent can just have units within 6. What would usually happen is your opponent would have units within 6, but not wholly within 6, because they weren't planning for it.
Usually a center objective is such that within 6 is behind their ruin in the middle of the table where they're staging. So they're going to have something back there. Not wholly within, just within.
Yeah.
So it is quite difficult, honestly, on a lot of boards to score this.
And you'll get the little one much easier if they are within 6.
But is trading a unit worth 2 victory points? That's a question.
Maybe, maybe not.
So this is a lot less than I get 5 or 3.
Exactly.
All the time. All right, Assassination. So it's any battle round, and this is one of the ones that can be fixed, of course.
Yep.
So while the card is active, if you're using fixed, each time you kill an enemy character model, not character unit, character model, 4 victory points. And then if you are using tactical, then end of either player's turn, one or more character units were destroyed, you get 5, or if all the characters have been destroyed, you get 5.
This is, I think, the only card that has a difference for tactical versus fixed. I could be wrong about that, but off my memory, that is the only one.
There aren't too many, yeah.
I think this is just as good as it was before.
Yep, if you like
Solid
taking
card.
Assassinate, and if you happen to get that mission roll where you can swap out, it actually becomes quite a bit more valuable, honestly.
All right, behind enemy lines. So this one you can also fix. If it's the first battle round, you can draw a new secondary mission card and shuffle this card back into your secondary mission deck. Yes, they changed it. They said you can. The worst thing was getting Storm Hostile, bottom of turn 1, and being forced to put it back in the deck even though you could do it.
Yeah.
And now all of the ones where they're like, oh, it wouldn't be fair to you to have you draw this on turn 1, they give you the option to put it back in the deck, which is so nice.
So huge. This combined with the Stratagem being not restricted to once, even though Tactical doesn't get a victory point bonus on any of these, you are going to score cards more consistently, which is a big deal.
Yes. Also, behind enemy lines did not have that rider before, and does have that rider now. You draw behind enemy lines, capture enemy outpost on turn 1.
Happens.
It was so I did it last week. It was so stupid because you just couldn't do either of them. You're in your deployment zone. You can't. You're not Eldar most of the time. Sometimes you are.
So, I think that's a really nice quality of life change.
Yeah, I think it's great. Otherwise, it is the same. 1 for 3 victory points, 2 for 4. Now, I thought it was...
It used to be 5 for Tactical.
It used to be 5 for tactical. It used to be, I think, 2 for having 1 in unfixed.
No, I think it was still 3.
It was still 3? Okay.
Yeah, it was still 3, I think.
I didn't fix behind enemy lines very often, if you couldn't tell.
I'm pretty sure it was 3 still for fixed.
All right. Next up.
All right, bring it down. So when drawn, if there are no enemy monster or vehicle units on the battlefield, you can discard this card and draw a new one.
So nice.
Oh, I'm playing against, like, Custodes infantry spam. We're 80 Black Templar Crusaders and no vehicle. All right, I just got a dead draw. Sucks. Now, it's like, nope. Goes back in the deck. I don't have to worry about it.
It used to be, like, my old Grey Knight list would be designed to, like, stop a variety of cards. Like, you drew Bring It Down, it was a dead draw. You literally couldn't do it.
Excuse me, you discard the card and draw a new one. You don't put it back in the deck.
reshuffle it back in. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
It's not a, I can do this later. It's a, I can never do this. Get out of here.
Yep. So any battle round while the card is active, each time an enemy monster or vehicle unit is destroyed, not model, then you count the number of wounds. So the total of the wounds characteristic of the models in that destroyed unit was 15 plus. You add an additional 2.
So you score 2 if you kill a unit.
A vehicle monster unit.
And you score 4 if they had 15 or more
starting wounds.
Mm-hmm. And you score 6 if they had 20 or more starting wounds.
Yep. So these are cumulative. So destroying a monster vehicle that started with 20 is the 6. Now, what does this mean? Well, it used to be vehicle models would count. Now it's vehicle units. You still get extra points for the number of wounds, but it means you have to kill the whole unit. Yeah.
This does not have a cap. You can score, theoretically, 20 victory points on the turn you draw this.
Yes, you could.
You could theoretically score 40, I think, if you were doing tactical, right?
Yeah, so each time an enemy monster or vehicle is destroyed, you get 2 points, and then you keep adding the cumulative.
And there's no cap. There's just no cap.
So if you kill 3 big knights in a turn, you're like, sweet lord.
18 victory points off 1 tactical card.
Yeah. Up to your max of 40 secondaries.
That is ridiculous.
So big plays are cool. However, like I was mentioning, if it's a vehicle unit, so it's like crisis suits with a commander, for instance, that used to just auto give up. As soon as you kill the model, you get the points for it immediately.
Yeah.
Now you only get the points after the unit is destroyed. So if the commander survives and just flies away, or like the one crisis and commander flies away, you're good.
Yeah, but it's also like, let's say there's 2 crisis units that are both on their last legs. You draw this card, it is 12 victory points. Cleanse. Mm-hmm. So in your shooting phase, 1 or more units from your army within range of an objective marker not within your deployment zone. End of your turn, if the unit performing this action is still within range of the same objective marker and you control that objective marker, it's cleansed. So it's basically the same as it was before. You have to control the objective marker, move a unit on, do an action. Now it's an actual action, not an action. Then you cleanse it. If you cleanse one objective, it's 2. If you cleanse 2, it's 4. This used to be 3 and 5.
Yep, it is still a fixed option.
Yep.
And I believe you can still put like a knight chassis between 2 objectives and do the action once and get both, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So it is one of the better fixed ones. Usually it was comboed with homers, and you kind of just play a relatively defensive cagey game, do your actions, get your points.
Yeah, you still see that.
Yep, I think it's still good. Then we have Containment here. So this is an action one. Starts in your shooting phase. You pick 1 or more units from your army that are wholly within 9 of 1 or more battlefield edges and not within your deployment zone. So select a different one of those battlefield edges for each of the units. It completes immediately. If completed, each battlefield edge is contained by your army, and it can be scored in any battle round into your turn. For each battlefield edge contained by your army this turn, 3 victory points, up to 6. Oh, there's a cap.
There's a cap. This one is very easy to score.
This is like a weirder version of Investigate Signals.
Yeah, but Investigate Signals where your units have to be within 9 inches of the board edge rather than 9 inches of the corner is so much less restrictive that it's actually kind of ridiculous.
It is.
You can have
It just
units...
can't be in your deployment zone, so it's not an easy like early game.
No, you just walk out of your deployment zone and you're like done. Because not within 9 inches is very permissive. Like you can be in a lot of places on the board and be within 9 inches of a deployment zone, of a board edge.
Yep, outside your deployment zone. Yep.
I think this is a great change because Investigate Signals was, in my opinion, very stupid. It only rewarded armies that wanted to not play 40k, because if you're playing
Playing had a ludicrous amount of models.
yeah, or could teleport, or had a lot of random stuff in Deep Strike, because going to the corners is the last thing you want for your units in a general sense.
Yeah.
And this is a lot more reasonable, but with a lower cap on the amount of points you could score. Love that.
Okay, that one is just tactical, not fixed.
Yep.
Then we have Cull the Horde. This one is a fixed one, and it is new. So when it's drawn, if there are no enemy units on the battlefield that satisfy either of the conditions required to achieve this card, you can discard it and draw a new secondary mission. So any battle round while the card is active, each time an enemy infantry unit is destroyed, if 1 or more of the following conditions are satisfied, you get 5 victory points. So the conditions are the starting strength of the destroyed unit was 20 plus, so big old infantry unit.
Big boys.
Or the total of the wounds characteristic of the models in the destroyed unit was 25 plus at its starting strength.
This is not easy to actually have. I was thinking like, oh, my World Eater is a 6-man Exalted 8-bound. No, that's 18 wounds.
Yep, it's not that. It is really for the genuine Horde armies.
Yeah, or like a big
Green
unit
Tide,
of
Endless
Terminators.
Tide, big unit of Terminators. Custodians don't proc it. If you
No,
run,
they don't. They go up to 15 minutes because you ignore the leaders in the unit as well. It says that right at the bottom.
Yep.
If there's no units you discard this. You can discard it and draw a new secondary. You probably will. I think that's a great mechanic, as we said before.
100%.
But a lot of units won't satisfy this.
But if you're playing against like Endless Swarm or something like this, booyah.
Oh yeah, no. If you're playing against Endless Swarm, this is a 20. Like literally just a 20. You're done.
One of the things they confirmed in the packet was if you kill a unit and it comes back, you still get the points.
Sweet.
You still get the points, even if that same unit comes back.
There's also no cap on this. So if you're playing Endless Swarm and you draw this tactical,
and you kill
3 units, it's 15
What if you kill
points.
3 Crusader bricks in the same turn, Jack?
All right, I know you played Votan. You did that to somebody last week. You sick man.
Cliff, I love you. You're a great opponent.
But like you play Endless Swarm, legitimately, you're going to kill like 80 gaunts every turn because they have 200. They bring 20 back every turn.
Just imagine the turn that you do kill them all. You're like
20. This is a 20 on tactical. Let's go. Like yeah, you just kill 4 units and suddenly you score 20, and that's very real. I think,
especially
legitimately.
If you just keep them all wounded.
You know how we said you can dig?
Yeah.
I would be digging for Cull the Horde into them. I would legitimately be like, this one isn't Cull the Horde. Ditch it. Draw another one.
Let's go, baby.
Into Green Tide?
Yeah.
Seriously. Like, you can just score 10, 15 points off this in a single turn.
100% you couldn't. It would be massive.
You get it turn 3 on. Yeah, you can finish some units off.
So, like, even though you're not getting the victory point bonus for tactical anymore, the big money plays are going to be big money.
Big money. Because no cap means Like, I play, as I said, into Endless Swarm, you draw this off the Heezy, it is 20 victory points.
If you do the damage.
Yeah. Like, I just gotta kill some Gaunts, eh? And you can, real talk against them, I'd probably just fix this, and it's a free 20 they printed on a card.
Yeah.
I don't think Endless Swarm's gonna like that at all.
But I want my CP Jack.
They printed a 20. They literally printed, if your opponent's Endless Swarm, score 20
Did they
points
print
and
a
move
second
on.
20? If they did, I'll do it.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right, defend Stronghold. So this one is when drawn, if it's the first battle round, draw a new secondary mission card and shuffle it back into your deck. It's scored end of your opponent's turn or end of the battle, whichever comes first. If you control one or more objectives in your deployment zone, 3 points. It's nice that you can redraw this if you go first. Oh, well, you had to previously.
Wait, hold on.
It was the first battle round. You had
Sorry.
to.
Going back to Call the Horde. I think I know what every green tide player is going to do. They're going to pay for 20 dudes and to take 19.
Can you do that in match play?
Yeah.
That's available in match play?
You're allowed to take fewer models. You just have to pay for the 20.
What if you have the characters?
The characters don't count.
Oh, yeah, they don't count. So run 19?
I think you legitimately run 19-man gargoyles and 19-man green tide duders.
Because you can... I thought they restricted understrength units some way. I feel like that's in the rules commentary.
It might be somewhere.
match play?
I think you can just take understrength.
You might be able to. Don't quote any of that.
Yeah.
Go read the rules commentary. There's something about understrength units in there.
You're at least allowed to do it to some extent, and you probably will.
If you can cheese this, yes.
If you can cheese this.
You would.
Because otherwise this is a 20 they printed on a card, and you will want to avoid that.
Probably.
Yeah. Anyway, Defense Stronghold again.
Basically, good easy card when you draw it. If you draw it turn 1, it goes back in the deck.
This one you are not allowed to keep it. This is not a can redraw. This is a must because it is balancing for your opponent.
Yeah.
You can't. Defense Stronghold is too easy turn 1, so they're like, no, you don't get to choose. Go back in.
All right, moving on. You got Engage on all fronts, which is going to be a fixed one as well.
If you have a unit wholly within 3 different table quarters, and they are all more than 6 inches from the center, which is new, 2 victory points. And if you have 4 table quarters, other than aircraft and battle shocked, 4 victory points. This is big.
Did it used to be 3 inches?
I don't think it used to be anything of the
No,
center.
there was a middle qualifier, right?
Might have been 3, if it was any of them. I know you could hold the center objective, and it was outside 3 inches of any other table quarter.
Yeah.
Now that's not a thing. You can be just over the line, but you can't be within 6 of the center. I know it used to be you could hold the center objective and still be in a table quarter. That is now gone. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah. So this makes it a bit easier. If there are fewer than 3 units from your army on the battlefield, you can discard it and draw a new one.
That might have been in there already.
Maybe.
I'm not 100% sure.
I never have 3 or less
Exactly.
units.
It's just not happening.
But that's an interesting change. It is a lot easier to score the 3 on this.
Holding 3 quarters.
Or-
Yeah, because
or
you just
even
have to be
4 quarters.
barely over the line. You don't have to be 3 inches past the line. You have to be barely over.
It's holy, but still, it's very easy to get.
Establish Locus. This is deploy homers.
And also fixed.
Yes,
Option.
this is fixed, fixable. So there is an action in your shooting phase if that unit is either within your opponent's deployment zone or within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. They establish a locus. They definitely don't deploy a teleport homer. They establish a locus.
You want to establish a locus.
I want to establish that locus. If they are within 6 inches of the center, it is 2 victory points. If they're within your opponent's deployment zone, it is 4. It used to be 3 and 4 for fixed and 3 and 5 for tactical. Now it is 2 and 4 for both. This is dramatically worse as a fixed option. Still pretty good though.
Yeah, it's still like a very safe 10 points.
Yeah.
And if you have redeploys and extra mobility, you can go for the extra points. Now it is much more worth. Because previously, when you could score 3 in the center, was it really worth getting the extra point, trading unit in your opponent's half of the board? Like, that was a real consideration. Now, 2 extra points is a bit more incentivized.
Trying to make a beachhead where you can repeatedly establish a locus in your opponent's deployment zone is going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be wholly within, again, still, you just have to be within. I think this is still going to be a very good fixed card. But it's no longer the
auto take.
It used to be if you were taking fixed, you did homers and something else. And figuring out the something else was legitimately hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny because at the start of the start of 10th edition, it was 2 for doing it in the center, and then they increased it, and that was a mistake.
Yeah, everybody took, if you took fixed, you took homers.
Yeah.
Period, end of sentence. Then you figured out what your other card was. And now I think there's another sentence.
There is.
Yeah.
All right, extend battle lines, one of our old favorites. Scored in any battle round, end of your turn, you control one or more objective markers within your deployment zone and one or more objectives within no man's land, you get 5. If you only have one unit on the battlefield and that unit controls one objective marker in no man's land, you get 2. If you're really on your last legs, but you still got an objective, you get 2.
I've had that come up exactly once, and not for me. But yeah, no, this is exactly as good as it was before. It was one of the best cards in the deck.
Yep.
It might have been the best card in the deck.
You cannot fix it.
Yeah, you can't fix it, thank God for that, because Extend Battle Lines fix would be gross. But Extend Battle Lines is usually just a 5 when you draw it.
Yep.
Marked for Death. This one is very interesting. Your opponent, when you draw it, your opponent selects 3 units from their army. If they only have 1 or 2 units, they have to select them. If there are no units from their army, you get rid of this card and draw a new one. Sure. So when you draw it, your opponent picks 3 of their units. If any of those units are destroyed or removed from the battlefield for whatever reason, that turn you get 5 points. And you can hold on to it, and you can score it at the end of your opponent's turn too. I think this is substantially worse than it appears. I think situationally it can be quite good. It's not a bad way to like lock down a bunch of Dread Knights and make sure they can't teleport, because if they're removed from the battlefield to teleport,
Yeah, 5 points, baby.
5 points.
Or like Swooping Hawks.
Swooping Hawks, they just can't leave. You're like, all right, the unit I think I might actually kill and Swooping Hawk. Oh, but hold on, you don't get to choose, your opponent gets to choose.
Yeah, your opponent chooses.
So it is much worse than that, right? I keep forgetting that.
But like, if they're running low on units towards the end, it's going to be hard whether they pick like their actual damage dealers or their trash units, because if their trash units need to go up into reserve or something like that, then it's hard.
Yeah. I think this is going to be worse than people will think it is, just because it's not kill a unit in your opponent's army. It is kill 1 of 3 units that your opponent is fairly confident you're not going to kill.
It's a good one for the late game when resources are lower.
Yeah, and they don't get to choose.
This is a perfect target for 1 CP. I will not be getting this, and I'm confident in that. I'll just get a new one.
Yep. A decent amount of the time, it's going to be like with the Eldar list I played at the tournament last week, going to be like the Guardian's my home objective, the Farseer that is behind a wall in my backfield, and the unit of Swooping Hawks that's in the corner, or the Avatar that's fortuned, or whatever. Like 3 units, I just am pretty confident you're not going to get.
Yep. So when you're late game and you're like, okay, well I have like 6 units, I have to use all of them. This is tough.
Yeah, it might be a lot harder there.
All right, no prisoners. Classic. So any battle round while this card is active, each enemy unit is destroyed for 2 victory points, up to 5.
Yep. No change.
Nope.
It was a decent card before. It's a decent card now.
Yep, still a solid card.
Overwhelming Force. While an enemy unit that started the turn within range of inject marker is destroyed, you get 3 victory points up to 5. Again, did not change at all.
Still good.
Still good.
We got Recover Assets. This one's brand new. When drawn, if there are fewer than 2 units from your army on the battlefield, God help you, you can discard this card and draw a new secondary mission card.
You might need a bit more than that to help dig you out, but this is there for you.
This is there for you. Draw a new one that will also be probably difficult.
If you have fewer than 2 units, if you have 1 unit from your army on the board.
All right, so Recover Assets action, your shooting phase. 2 or more units from your army. If each of those units is wholly within a different one of the following areas: your deployment zone, no man's land, your opponent's deployment zone. End of your opponent's next turn, or the end of the battle, whichever comes first. If either 2 or 3 of those units are on the battlefield, if completed, those units recover assets. You just have to be on the battlefield end of your opponent's next turn.
What was it? It was like retrieve Octarius data or something back in the day. It was ROD, I remember people said. Where you had to do actions in your deployment zone, no man's land, and your opponent's deployment zone. Yeah. And like if you did all 3, you got 10 points.
Yeah, so end of your opponent's turn or the end of the battle, whichever comes first, you get 3 victory points for 2 of your units recovering assets. So that's very likely your deployment zone, no man's land. 2 units did actions, you get 3 points. Or if you do it in all 3 zones, you get 6.
That is going to be like, or end of the battle. So like if you're going second, you can be like, oh, recover assets, bink, bink, bink.
Yep.
Complete. This requires having several units to do actions. And doing them every turn, and your opponent gets to interact with it first. That being said, this is an incredibly strong secondary, and I'll tell you why.
This is fixed, to be clear.
That's why.
Yep.
It's fixable, and you can have one dude standing just over your deployment zone line doing an action, and one dude standing just inside your deployment zone line doing an action. And if they do that every turn of the game, you get a 15. This is a very, very good secondary if you just do that every turn. And if at some point in the game you get to actually do this in your opponent's deployment zone, everyone around will give you high fives and it'll be great.
This is the new deploy homers, or the friend of deploy homers.
Yes, it is more interactive than deploy homers.
Yep.
Because if your opponent can get to those units, they can stop it from occurring, which I think is great design. But that being said, it is very easy to just be like, I get 3 with no interaction every turn of the game. End of story. Also, if you're going second on this, you'll get 3, 3, 3, 3, 6.
Which is a good score.
It's a good score. It's an amazing fixed score.
It's called you get all your points.
Yes. It is called, I believe that is an 18 on secondaries, and it's very easy if you go second. Like, Lord help you trying to stop Eldar from doing that on turn 5. You just can't.
Like, 15 is already good, just doing it 3 for all of them, but once you get like 18, 20, you're awesome.
Yes. Recover assets seems really good. I think a 15 or an 18 is very reasonable when you take this, unless you get run over. It is harder to do than homers, because everything is harder to do than homers. But I think it's a very good secondary, and I think a lot of people are going to pick it and sit back and be like, 15 points, baby, come to me.
Yep. All right, you want to do Sabotage?
Sure. Sabotage. It's an action in your shooting phase. Cannot fix this one. In your shooting phase, 1 unit from your army that is within a terrain feature and not within your deployment zone. End of your opponent's next turn or end of the battle. If your unit is on the battlefield, your unit commits Sabotage. So when you do it, if your opponent committed Sabotage, they bold it every time, this turn and is not within your opponent's deployment zone, 3 victory points. If it is within your opponent's deployment zone, 6. Fairly low scoring because you can... it's fairly low scoring because you have to hold it for an entire turn till the end of your opponent's turn and do it, but it is 3 points, and you just have to be just out of your deployment zone. Not fixable. If you could do this and recover assets, you could literally sit there twiddling your thumbs the whole game and score 6 on secondaries every turn.
Well, it's not fixed.
I'm saying it's not fixed.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think this one's fine. I think it's going to be a little more awkward than people might want to do every turn, but if you draw this on turn 5, it's going to be not that hard to do 6 victory points.
Probably. Yeah, this is a reasonable one. But I like ones that are not, I just get 1,000 points versus I barely get any or it's really difficult.
Yeah.
This is one of those medium ones where you'll get some amount of points. You should.
Yeah.
All right, secure no man's land. End of your turn, you control 1 objective in no man's land, 2 victory points. 2, 5. It's awesome.
It's the same as it was before.
Yep. Use
Secure
it all the
no man's land and extend battle lines on turn 1 is the god draw, and have fun with that.
Heck yeah.
And we're on the last one, there's no capture enemy outpost.
Nope, it is gone.
I think that's probably good design. It was so swingy.
It was dumb. It was
Yeah.
either you drew it late game when you got there and it was awesome, or you drew it early and it was just a dead draw. Oh, how are you feeling about all these changes? How do you feel about the cards first, and then...
I think they're dramatically better than they were before. A lot of
agree.
the rough edges are smoothed off. A lot of the ones that didn't make sense or were feel bads if you drew them at the wrong time, those are gone. I think it's fine. I think you're going to see every once in a blue moon, you're going to see someone get 20 points on Call the Horde when they rip it off the top, and that's going to be pretty dumb.
Or bring it down. Those
Or bring it
probably
down.
should have some cap, and it's fine if even just like 10, 12.
I think Call the Horde should have a cap of like 10, and Bring It Down should have a cap of like 8, and that'd be fine.
Yep.
I think that Call the Horde...
For non-fix, we're talking about
Exactly. Call the Horde is a little too easy to fix and do against some armies. I think it's going to be massively I would not be surprised if Call the Horde made Green Tide substantially worse for
just
existing.
because your opponent can get just easy secondaries.
Yep, same with Endless Swarm.
As you see it, a lot of the secondaries require you going out, doing stuff in the middle of the table, usually near objectives, and if your opponent's controlling all those objectives, it's not that easy.
No, it is not that easy. Something I've noticed is the points generally from primary and secondary are harder to achieve.
They're a bit lower.
Which means higher scores are going to be rarer, hundreds are going to be hard, and And I think that's fine. I would love it if the average point score of a game was like 70, right?
Yeah, like 70 to 80. That's a like good range right there.
Yeah, where most of the time the game doesn't go above that. Like 60 even would be fine, right? You score 60 points, you get a lot of granularity. If your opponent got ragdolled on objectives, they might get a 30. Whereas if you do really well, you might get a 90. There's a lot more range in there rather than everyone gets an 85. It's like, all right.
Yeah, and that it helps with the removal of priority targets towards that goal, because a lot of the missions don't quite score as many points.
Yeah, it's going to be tougher to score points.
So it's pretty interesting. I quite like the cards. I really love the fact that you can use new orders all the time. And we'll see if that mission rule is used or not. Probably it won't, because it existed before in a different form and wasn't used in any of the competitive ones. So honestly, that strat alone is enough for me. And I like a lot of the new cards. I think the deck is easier to score in general, and there's a lot more flexibility in when you can discard things at certain timings.
That's true. It might be counteracted by the fact that dead draws, like purely dead draws, cards you can't score at all.
Much harder.
Much harder. Because like you draw, bring it down, and they have no card. They have nothing to score it with. You get to redraw. Whereas currently, or previously, nah, you're just screwed, man. That sucks.
Yeah, I think the feels bad of the cards is dramatically reduced.
Yes.
Which is very nice.
I also think we're going to go kind of back to a little bit of where we were in like 9th edition or whatever, or 8th edition maybe, whatever it was, where like you had one vehicle and so that you had to take those secondaries. Like if my opponent has no bring it down points that they give up at all, that's one thing. But if they have like a rhino in the back, I can't get rid of the card and I can't score it, so I get to eat dirt.
I think there's some increased amount of action secondaries here, which will emphasize having enough units to be able to do them, especially if you were going and trying to get, like a nice midfield position you want to get on objectives. Sometimes you're also going to need the action monkeys that aren't quite there as well, and layers of them. So having stuff is going to be pretty valuable. Now the 0 OC change for actions is massive, because a lot of the units that you would take to do that were 0 OC. So you're going to have to rethink your lists about what you want to be doing actions. They're not going to be quite as cheap as previously they were.
Yeah, let me just go through and very quickly see what the complete fixed versus tactical suite is looking like. So you can fix Assassination, behind enemy lines, bring it down, cleanse, Cull the Horde, engage on all fronts, homers, establish Locus, recover assets, and storm hostile. So the tactical pool looks very similar to where it was before. Mm-hmm. You have recover assets, which is going to be a pretty good tactical card, or a pretty good fixed card, sorry.
Yeah.
And I think other than that, homers or establish Locus is made significantly worse. You get 2 per turn if you do it easily. Engage is about the same. There's another targeted one, so you have Assassinate, Bring It Down, and Cull, whereas before there's only Assassinate and Bring It Down. I think Fixed is going to be very similar to how it was before, but they added in a couple of cards that are pretty good, and they diversified, not just taking homers every time.
And there's a little bit more diversity, so that should be interesting. Tactical, on the other hand, I feel really good about tactical, honestly.
And you can speed up the pace you're going through those cards, or slow it down and gain CP depending on what the board state requires, which I think is going to be a very, very interesting way to express skill.
I think they had an interesting balance between the two previously, and I think that balance is still relatively there.
Yeah.
Where you still can take both and feel good about it.
Yeah, I mean, over the edition so far, I've been leaning very much in favor of score 1, ditch 1, and just keep the CP, fuel in the fires of war, and just get in there and kill your opponent.
Me too, because I don't really play the factions that are just like, I start with an extra CP.
Yeah. Those
factions love fixed, and with fact is, what was it called? Recover assets or something?
It is recover assets. Yeah, that one is very good.
That one's going to be taken.
It's going to be taken a lot. Now, it is risky if they start getting folded onto the back foot. Like, it could be a problem. But they can just score 15 points without really leaving their deployment zone, right? One unit steps just over the line, and that's it.
Yeah. The difference is like your second one, if it's not a kill secondary, it's another defensive one. Homers not being a 15 now is a big deal.
Yeah. I do think that the fact that it completes at the end of the game, the recover assets, means if Eldars go in second, it is just an 18.
Which
unless you rush them down.
That's a great card.
It's amazing secondary. So I I'm very positive on both running tactical and running fixed. I think you're going to do quite well on both. A lot of the better cards are in tactical, which is nice, like Defend Stronghold or Secure No Man's Land, Extend Battle Lines. Those are all in tactical, which is good. Imagine you could fix Extend Battle Lines. That would be stupid.
Fix it for 2 points each.
It would still be very good there.
It'd still be good, but it's like 10 points. Then you take a 1 for 15, only 25. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. As it is, I think basically every one of these is a positive change for 40k over what their replacement was in the past. Secret missions are just way better than Gambits were.
And they will be taken.
Yes.
Like a decent amount of the time.
I'm interested to see the mission rules because currently 9 out of every 10 rounds is Chilling Reign, or is like there's an extra objective which just feels like it's part of the mission anyway.
Yeah, so Games Workshop last time had done a whole tournament companion. They'll probably update that document with whatever their new combos are. They would take, here's your primary, here's your mission rule, here's your deployment. And they created 15 of those. And they'll probably do that again. So whenever we get that document, we'll do an update to this with another stream. But for now, these mission rules are not quite as crazy as the previous set of them, where they were either wildly silly or useless.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit more interesting ones here.
The missions are better than they were before. They kept some of the worst designed ones, but they got rid of
supply
priority
drop
targets, which was great.
Unexploded, Ordnance, just like those. Hopefully those two really aren't showing up much.
Hopefully. The secret missions are way better than Gambits. I think the deployment zones are slightly better.
This show's experience of playing 10th edition actually went into the design of this.
Yeah, so I'm very excited for this. I can't wait to play these new missions. I can't wait to get the Pariah Nexus tournament companion and start putting together, see how those missions play out.
Yeah, hopefully you're as excited about the new missions as we are. Excited to get them on the table. If you do want to see some new games using the brand new missions, in addition to brand new rules with the Sisters and GSC codexes, then go ahead and head over to the warhammer.vhx.tv, where the 3-day free trial, you can sign up and go ahead and check out those games right now.
Yep.
Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. Please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow the channel. In addition, leave a comment below letting us know how you feel about the new mission packet, what your favorite parts are, what parts you don't quite like as much, and we'd be excited to read them. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Jack. This was a really exciting analysis, and we're just so excited to play more 40k.
I really am.
I want to just play right now. Seriously, just want to go after this.
I want the Pariah Nexus one. I want to look at all the missions. I want to see the combinations. Because right now it seems like we're seeing the Lego blocks, but we're not seeing the actual like Lego castle you can build with them.
In addition, there's also I think has been teased that there's going to be some new U.S. Open layouts as well for how to deploy terrain.
Interesting.
So there should be a lot of interesting things that's going to make the meta just very exciting. A lot of things to figure out.
I'm deeply excited about that. I really am.
Come back, join us. We're going to be trying to figure it out, and hopefully you'll be hanging out with us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time. So long for now.